Eric Fleury is an assistant professor of government and international relations at Connecticut College in New London. He joins us now as we continue to take a look closer at what Biden's decision means for Connecticut and for the country. Eric, thank you for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So how different is this election going to look in November as to what we may have seen had Biden stayed on the ballot?
Oh, I think, the table has been completely upturned. I think, a large majority of voters are approaching this election with a certain degree of kind of dreary inevitability. The obvious replay of 2020, two elderly candidates, neither of whom poll very far above 40% on their good days, and yet for their own reasons and by their own mechanisms, the party, converged around them, with a sort of, like I said, kind of as though it was destiny. And now we finally have a kind of realm of almost infinite possibility. So I think it's an incredible mode reversal, and now we can really wonder as to what is going to happen rather than sort of dread what we thought we know was going to happen.
And do you think that this gives the Harris campaign enough of time to switch roles, from VP to president and run on that campaign to possibly win come November? Or do you think it's too close to the election?
I don't think it's necessarily too close, which is not to say I think it happens. I mean, this is she has an obvious advantage. She has a leaps and bounds advantage over all the other candidates that everyone else is going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks, because even though she has no official capacity anymore, we have in our minds, we equate running mate with vice president. And so she's essentially going to have the kind of first turn to impress the delegates. I think the party is going to want to maintain as much stability as possible. I don't think a divided convention is anything somebody wants is necessarily a first choice in terms of presenting a firm, unified party that is ready to compete with the other side. But of course, it's been made very evident based on recent events that the party also wants to win. And so if there's a sense that Harris, for whatever reason, is not the person that can win, then I think that we have that alternative option open to us.
Now, why are we seeing some people coming out immediately and immediately backing Harris versus some people that aren't immediately doing it? The Obamas, for example, not immediately showing their support. Why do you think the two sides to that?
Well, that's a good, interesting point. I think on one hand, but Harris is the obvious choice. They mean that literally, not to say that she should or is going to be the president or the nominee. But if you're going to put a bunch of people in a room and yell out who should be the next president with Biden dropping out, Harris is the logical choice. But I think at the same time, because there's no real democracy attached to that, Harris has not been voted on. But insofar as 2024 is concerned, and so I think, especially insofar as the Democrats are running a message of we are the party of democracy, to have Harris be a kind of handpicked successor, one that is crowned entirely by a kind of insider process, would obviously run quite counter to that message. So I think she needs to be able to, so maybe some people are hedging before she has a chance to, like I said, kind of win herself over in a kind of pseudo-democratic process, even though there's no really democratic way to elect a president.
All right, Eric. Professor Eric Fleury of Connecticut College, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.